Our guest this evening chased her dream and actually lived it. She persevered and tirelessly achieved that dream so many of us never did. A graduate of Harvard College, Liz had an extensive performing career with Los Angeles Ballet and was the 2011 recipient of the Suzanne Farrell Dance Prize for Outstanding Artistry in the field of dance. Throughout her dance career, she performed and was featured in all the full-length classical ballets and also performed as a guest dancer at the Boston Ballet. Liz retired now from ballet and works at the Statehouse as a legislative aide. It's my pleasure to introduce Liz Walker.
Photo before online, possibly. So, I've seen it. So this photo is behind the scenes of ballet in a nutshell, right? Everything's beautiful and easy on the outside, pink satin toe shoes. But what's going on underneath and behind the curtain is another story. This particular photo has been seen by millions of people and shared on pretty much any social media platform you could imagine. It's been made into a widely shared meme. Everyone wants to be successful until they see what it actually takes, which I don't fully agree with, but apparently it's resonated with millions of people because they've shared it around the world. So those are actually my feet. This photo was taken 5 years ago in LA. And so that's on the right foot, one of my custom fit point shoes. And if you look closely, that foot's arch has an extra bump that formed after my reconstructive foot surgery that I had after a dance injury. And on the left foot, it exposes what's under those point shoes: bunions, blisters, corns, floor burns, tape for a sprained ankle, and my favorite, the bruised toenails that would fall off pretty much once a year. And they felt much better after they fell off, but it sounds disgusting, I know. So, because I agreed to work with a photographer who had a lot of Instagram followers to take this picture, my anonymous feet float around the internet and will for many years to come, acting as a symbol for the pain and sacrifice of ballet. And as much as pain and sacrifice are a part of a career in ballet, and as much as I personally struggled sometimes, both physically and emotionally, I had some really incredible experiences in that world. And I'd like to take you through some of them tonight. So I started, like many young girls and boys do, taking ballet classes as one of my many activities. And that's when my love for dance and for the joy of moving was born. Then as I got into my teens, I made the decision to study ballet in a more pre-professional setting because I wanted to work towards the possibility of a professional career. And then for the last 2 years of high school, I knew that I needed intensive training in proximity to a company, so I auditioned and enrolled in American Ballet Theater School in New York, and so these are a couple photos from during that time. I think on the left I'm 16, and on the right I'm 18. That sort of life was, I went to my academic school where I lived in Connecticut at 7:45 every morning, left school one period early at 1:15, raced into the city with the help and support of my amazing mom, who drove me every weekday, trained from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m., and then took the train back out to Connecticut and did it all over again the next day. And then on Saturdays, we were at the ballet studio the whole day. And summers were spent dancing full-time to get the taste of what it's like to be in a company. So a lot of the people that I was dancing with at that time had actually left full-time academic school and were doing high school by homeschool or by correspondence so that they could fully focus on ballet. So it was a bit of an anomaly that I was doing this kind of race back and forth to New York just to try to squeeze it all in. But all of that work, running back and forth during high school, eventually paid off when at 18 I was offered a position with Los Angeles Ballet. And I leaped at the chance, unintended, and moved to LA sight unseen. That first year in the company really was a dream come true. It was a wonderful experience. I got to know what it meant to be in a ballet company. But over the following 4 years, I actually made the decision to go to college, which was very much encouraged by my parents, to whom I'm very grateful for helping me make that decision, which was not usual for most ballet dancers. As I said, you have to do this career while you're young, while your body can still hold up. And so a lot of people forego traditional college to just really dive into their career and do it afterward. But I made a different choice, and I had my first experience living here in Boston. I was at Harvard, and had a wonderful experience there, and feel that I really got a lot out of going to college. I'm very thankful I did. But I still was holding on to my dream of dancing, and I was pursuing dance while I was in school so that I could possibly continue with the company. So once I graduated, I returned to Los Angeles Ballet with the hope that I could work my way through the ranks and perform as many challenging roles as possible. Being in a ballet company means you're dancing all day, often 6 days a week, and while there are a lot of performances, the majority of your time is spent rehearsing and refining, maintaining your body, trying to prevent injury. So it's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that you don't see when you go to the performances. So I started in the Corps de Ballet, which is the second lowest rung in the company. And while I was in the Corps, I did a lot of group dances. It's the bread and butter of a Corps de Ballet dancer. But I also was fortunate to do some featured parts. But what I really wanted to work towards was dancing mostly soloist and principal parts. So that process to getting to do mostly soloist and principal parts ended up taking years of being tested and of proving myself. But we'll get to some of that later. So one of the things I loved about the company that I danced with was we performed a really varied repertory that ranged from modern and contemporary, Balanchine, to all the major full-length classical ballets. So I wanted to give you a taste of a very classical role that I danced, which is the Queen of the Dryads in Don Quixote. So, I need to make sure that my speaker's on. Because music is so important. Performances like this, working to gain my boss's trust as a consistent performer, I did a lot of understudying. So that was a second cast situation where I was guaranteed one show, but when you're an understudy, you are not guaranteed a show. So you just have to know everything, you have to stand in the back, learn the part, know it inside and out. And on a few occasions, I was an understudy and something happened last minute and I was thrown on, as they say. So I was thankful that I had been diligent and been prepared and knew the part. But it was really hard to stay motivated being an understudy, right? Because no eyes are on you, there's no guarantee. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges. One particularly dramatic time that this happened was before Los Angeles Ballet performed George Balanchine's masterpiece Stravinsky Violin Concerto, which if any of you go to see Boston Ballet, they did it a few seasons ago, so you may have seen it. So the piece is extremely stylized. It has a really complicated meter and structure. And the principal that I was understudying unfortunately got injured on stage the night before opening night. So it was high pressure, we were about to open, and she was spinning off into the wings and unfortunately hit a lighting boom and hurt her rib. Yeah, so very painful for her. I had been understudying, but I was not actually given a male partner to understudy with, so I had never tried. I'd tried it in the back, just contorting myself with no partner, but I'd never tried any of the very complicated lifts or partnering maneuvers with a partner. So that night we had an emergency rehearsal on stage, the next day another emergency rehearsal, and then I went on. So here is some of that night's performance. That role and showed I could really deliver and keep my nerves calm under stress, I ended up being promoted to soloist, which was something I wanted for a long time. I think I found out in the fall of 2016 that I was promoted, and I'd come back in the fall of 2011. So it was 5 full years which is millennia in ballet years. After I was promoted, I was understudying less, and I was first cast for larger parts more often. So I wanted to show you a view from Backstage as I make my first entrance for one of my favorite roles I danced during that period, and probably my favorite experience I will ever have on stage, the siren in Balanchine's Prodigal Son. Boston Ballet, sometimes they have this ballet in their rep. If you have a chance to go see it, it's really a special piece, the full story. It's biblical, and there's a really virtuoso male dancer who plays the prodigal son, and this character is just a dream of a role, and she's just this powerful kind of evil woman. So if you ever see it on the agenda, go check it out. So the last clip I'm going to show you is kind of funny. Being a dancer in LA, there were added perks that came with having close proximity to Hollywood. So I was actually chosen at one point to be a backup dancer for Iggy Azalea at the MTV Video Music Awards. And this was during the summer when she was sort of on top and had a lot of hit songs. And I'll just preface this by saying that the whole rehearsal process and performance process for this was 1 week, so it was a tiny fragment of my time as a dancer, and it was, not my main focus, more commercial, totally different world. But because it was televised and because everyone knows these pop culture icons, I actually got the most feedback from my entire career of people saying, "Wow, you've made it, and you must be so happy." And so it just goes to show sometimes people won't fully appreciate the work that you care the most about, and you just hold that close to you, but they might notice something else. So here's the VMA broadcast.
Always starts the same, but we're both down at plate and somehow you go astray. We went from nothing.
Totally different world from what I showed you before, but a lot of fun, and I really came away with it having so much respect for these musicians who make it big, because the stage was pounding, you can't hear yourself think, people are screaming, and they're trying to sing, or in her case, rap on key, and you cannot focus, so they really have to be so disciplined, and it doesn't look, you don't see how hard they are working themselves, so a lot of respect for them. And then, actually, I'll show you, the next week we were invited to be on the Ellen show, which is even more exciting for people. Ellen is awesome! So there's Ellen in the middle, and I'm down here on the right. I'll point to myself. That's me when I was very blonde. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and a fun taste of Hollywood in LA. So how did I get where I am now, working on Beacon Hill as a legislative aide, still doing arabesque in front of the Statehouse? Well, the short explanation is that it was a really complicated decision to leave the company and to leave and separate from my identity as a dancer, because it was such a huge part of who I am from childhood, and just, every day in the studio and on stage, I am just so attached to that world. So there were a lot of factors that played into that decision. Some of the realities of the profession had begun to wear on me. Constant worries about injuries and weight gain that never go away. Low compensation, lack of control over my career trajectory and the opportunities I was going to continue to get. There were also larger concerns that factored in. I was in a long-distance relationship with my now husband, Matt, and I really wanted to be in the same place as him. And it's been really wonderful since I've been back here in Boston. And I also had a desire to focus on, have less of a narrow focus, which, right, you have to be so laser focused in ballet. And you really, a lot of the time, to be successful, have to block out other things and only think about dancing. And I had a desire to have a second career and to focus on wider issues. And then probably the biggest factor, not that those aren't all huge, but the biggest factor was I really felt like I had reached the top of my game as a performer and as a dancer. But I recognized that the company environment that I was in, they weren't willing to continue to challenge me. I wasn't getting that next part up that was going to push me to the next level. And for me, continuing to do the same thing, while it would have been joyful, I didn't see the point in it to not be reaching for that next thing. So I made the difficult decision to leave, and I've just been taking it step by step since. But I think that each of you can probably relate to making a decision to leave something you truly love and to come to grips with that major change in your life. Retiring for me at 30 has been a grieving process. and the loss of my calling that I had since age 13 when I became more serious about ballet has been heartbreaking at times. I've had some really low moments. But I've also gained so much from being able to broaden my perspective and learn about the issues that I'm dealing with now. Today, I was there all day. It was an extremely busy day at the Statehouse with a number of really important hearings about housing and vaccine policy and climate, and I met with people who are just so passionate about each of these things that I can learn so much from each of them. So I do feel very grateful for the transition I've been fortunate enough to make. And I recognize that it's not the case for everyone leaving dance, that they can find themselves in something that's very exciting and very nourishing too. And I'm happy to know that my feet don't look like this anymore. So thanks everyone. Yeah, should I just select people if people have questions?
Well, I have one.
Jane.
Can you put into words what it is like being on the stage by yourself, solo, in front of an audience, and doing what you love so much?
Yeah,
Are there words
that's
for
a
it?
great. Yeah, sometimes it's very much something you can't explain with words, right? It's a almost spiritual experience. But I think the times when I think especially later in my career, I really tried to be present with each performance. And that world that I could go into when I was just saying, fully absorb this, fully be this character. It just feels like nothing else. You feel completely in control. You feel like you're accessing another level of life. And that's one of the things also that I miss the most, not being able to access that place anymore. But maybe I'll be able to find other ways to access it. We'll see. Yeah.
What drew you to working at the Statehouse?
So,
What drew you to working at the Statehouse?
oh, yeah. So let's see, I stopped dancing full-time in September of 2018, so a little over a year ago. And actually my first job was working for the Vice Mayor of Cambridge. And it was after being so intentional about ballet and following it and just doggedly pursuing it for my whole life. I didn't even really know that I wanted to leave it, right? I'd left the company, but I was thinking maybe I'll keep dancing in Boston. But I was actually sent by one of Matt's friends a job description for this aide to the vice mayor, and something about it, I thought, oh, I could do that, and I would get to learn about all these different things, and I would get to have a broad focus, and I think that was ultimately what drew me to that. And then how I ended up here is the woman who I was working for, the vice mayor, was not running again. And so I knew that I was going to have to find a different position because you're kind of tied to your legislator. And so we had worked a lot with Jonathan Hecht, who I work for now at the Statehouse, because he represents that part of Cambridge. And his aide was leaving, and I thought, okay, well, we'll get to know a whole new level of government and sort of see if that suits me better. And yeah, it's been fascinating so far. I've been there since October. Yes.
Once you're affiliated with a company, do you typically stay with that company for your whole career?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think kind of like in the wider employment world, it's changed a little bit. It used to be you would get into a company and that was your place where you stayed. Now people bounce around a little bit more. I'd say actually a lot of the people that I started with at Los Angeles Ballet have gone now to separate companies. So it varies, but I'd say it tends toward people hopping around a little bit more than it used to.
Well, you know how they say, think global, act locally? And this is what, like, I've always been told, don't ask, don't get. Could you help us do our music? We are choreographers.
Absolutely.
Get us dancing in little tennis outfits.
You saw how I lit up when you said you were doing a musical. I was like, Steve. I would love to. Yeah, that would be really fun.
What age do most ballerinas
yeah, okay, so when I was in my 20s, people who I had come up with who had made it pro had already retired by 23. But I'd say that the maximum for women, because you're dancing on point and it really does a number on your feet, is usually in the 40s. There's Wendy Whalen, who is very well known for dancing a very long time, having danced a very long time, excuse me. And she retired at 47 from New York City Ballet. So, very young, right? So I'd say maybe 30, which is when I retired a couple years ago, is about average. And men can usually get away with a little bit longer. But yeah, it's a blip of time, and then you have to give it up. So.
How are your hips and knees and toes now?
Yeah, they're much better, I have to say. I don't get out of bed and feel as many aches and pains, which is such a relief. And there were times when I was taking Advil every day, multiple times a day, just to be able to get through. And I never take Advil now, so it's really nice. Yes?
Do you ever think about reforming ballet and what that would take?
Reforming, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Right, so she asked if I ever think about reforming ballet and what that would take. Yeah, I think one of the big things I thought about, because the compensation was such a big factor for me as I was deciding to leave, was, is there some way to restructure priorities so that, performing arts nonprofits can not be, I think the fundraising is constantly an issue, and having enough money is constantly an issue, and so the people who suffer the most from that but have the greatest demands are the artists themselves. So I don't have any brilliant ideas, but I was thinking, there must be some way to restructure how these organizations are funded so that you can really support artists. And I think having cost constraints taken away would also take away a lot of the sort of stress and mistreatment that happens when you're in a ballet company.
Well, to tag along with what Elizabeth was just saying, there's a new series called Mrs. Maisel, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and I think it's fascinating because producers have brought in dance and music and singing, and I thought, my gosh, they're getting all of these beautiful arts onto the screen, which is what most of us look at now. The cost for theater and ballet is putting the production together because people physically have to come to the theater. But if you take all that talent, your talent, you're putting it on into productions that are on Netflix and Amazon.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that reform the
Right, and it's
more eyes on
it's
the
a,
talent?
yeah, and it's a fine line because, as I was saying about the big takeaway from the Iggy Azalea performance on the VMAs was, oh, this is where the eyes are, this is where people are seeing things, and I think that ballet does need to push forward, and while that beautiful moment of in-person immediacy in the theater is absolutely important, and people should always be coming to the theater, can you introduce people to ballet? And that's why someone like Misty Copeland, who has brought ballet much more mainstream recently and is always pushing the art form and is kind of everywhere, you see ads with her all the time. That's why I think she could be really helpful because she's actually brought people in to see ABT, the company she works for, because they know Misty Copeland. She has that brand recognition because she's gone out into the world. And so instead of being this insular ballet world that traditionally it's been, kind of locked away in the opera house, right? Finding ways to get out into the world and then draw people back in, I think is so important. It's tricky. Yes.
Could you say who a male and female ballet dancer is, whom you admire and why?
So she asked who both a male and a female ballet dancer who I admire is and why. Let's see.
Dead or alive.
Yeah. Still alive, but long retired. Suzanne Farrell was my absolute idol. She was just such a special performer, and it wasn't, she's an amazing technician, but it wasn't about technique. It was about her experience on stage, and that really came through to audience members. Male. I'd probably say any man I partnered with. Yeah, I think it's hard to narrow down. Suzanne is just so my easy female choice. But my good friend Dustin True, actually, who in the Stravinsky video I was partnering with, the one where I did the backflip off of him. He's a really special performer, and he really inspires me, so I'd say Dustin.
Have you thought of opening up a dance studio to teach young children here, maybe in Beacon Hill, or
Yeah.
to keep your hands in?
Yeah, so one thing I have done, so yes, I've thought of opening a ballet or dance studio to kind of keep my hands in the art form. And one thing I have done over the past year and a few months is continue to teach. So I substitute teach at Jose Mateo Ballet Theater over in Cambridge. And I've taught some private lessons too to aspiring young dancers. And while people have asked me in the past, do you teach? Do you love teaching? And I think that people are called to teach, and I don't think that I love teaching and I enjoy it, but I don't feel that I was called to do it as my bread and butter every day. So I think it's something that I like to keep and be able to dip into, but probably wouldn't open my own studio at any point. Yes.
Did you think about leaving prior? When you hit one of these low points?
Yeah,
and
so-
can you talk about the emotion around that, what kept you in, what you were weighing at that time?
Yeah, so she asked if I thought about leaving prior to the time I eventually left and what the emotions surrounding that decision or the feeling that maybe I might want to leave were. Yeah, there were, I think, obviously talked to Matt a lot about this because I talked to him about everything, but it was constant, honestly. It was really up and down. There's a lot of doubt. Am I on the right path? Do I need to transition, as dancers call it, career transition for dancers? Do I need to transition now? Am I wasting my time to be able to do the next thing? And I think I kept staying in it because I wanted to really make that, know that I had made 100% of effort. And when I eventually decided to leave, it felt like a different type of doubt. It didn't even feel like doubt. It felt like, oh, this isn't going to change, and I've given it my all, and at this point I need to step away. And so that's really the biggest part of how that decision was made, that I knew I had given it everything I could, and I knew I had gotten a lot out of it, and I was ready to be at peace with, I could always do more, and I could always hope for more, but I was ready to be at peace with it, the chapter being closed.
Yes. And how have you transitioned with your own body? And how do you treat your body today? How do you exercise? Do you do concentric work? Do you do eccentric work, stretching, strengthening? How much of a focus do you do on yourself? Because you obviously have a beautiful figure. I mean, how do you keep that going?
Yeah, okay, so she asked what I do to maintain, or how I, after being so physical every day, how I stay physical and how I keep up that relationship with my body. And that's, sorry, that's been a challenge where one part of me is like, okay, I spent so long focused on every ounce on my body and how everything was working together that I just don't want to think about it anymore, right? But at the same time, I realize when I spend a few days or a whole week without moving, like I need to move, I need to take long walks. I've been very committed the past few months to going every Sunday to a ballet class in Central Square at the dance complex, and I feel connected to myself when I'm able to dance in that way. So it's been a balancing act of figuring out how to not be as intense as I was before, right? But how to keep moving, yeah. And another way, actually, Ellen Comerford, who owns Corby, isn't here tonight because I think it's her husband's birthday. But actually, I think the way that I was connected in with Beacon Hill Women's Forum is Ellen, who owns a gyrotonic studio, and that's something that I started teaching when I was a dancer. And so I still do that a few times a week. I will just work myself out, and it really is kind of full body, but doesn't have the emotional baggage that ballet has for me. But I'm getting back to ballet, so yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to say how happy and grateful we all are for having you here to tell your
there's no doubt you have a huge future ahead of you, and this dance will be part of it.
Thank you. No, I think that means a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for this. That was such an inspiring story, and thank you for sharing your performances with us, as well as your life story and all the mentioning of the difficult decisions you made and your life story. So thank you so much.